Hello, welcome once again to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Scott Mailway, got Sports 25 to Life. Talking about Tuesday night, tonight's action here. And obviously, a big slate as it always is on Tuesdays. 15 games, every team playing. A lot of good pitching options, obviously, because of that. So I'm going to go ahead and not start at the top. I'm going to start with a guy that we know is going to be popular, especially due to his price. Only his third major league start, but Eduardo Rodriguez, $7,100 at Baltimore. And this is a Baltimore team that got mowed down by a rookie, Lance McCullers, last week. He's had 2 starts so far. Eduardo has 14 and 2/3, 5 total hits, 1 earned run. It was a home run, 14 Ks, 4 walks. I mean, this guy's going to have enormous ownership on a 2-pitcher site like this tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. That's just too good of a price, and you know how it goes with guys that are like really highly hyped, I guess we'll call it. I mean, they just get overdrafted. Even though he's probably not a guy that needs to be maybe 50% drafted, there's going to be some cash games probably that he's about around that ownership percentage at this price, especially because there's not a lot around his price today that you can feel really good about.
Yeah, and I mean, people are likely going to pair him with a top guy, and if I'm going to pair him with a top guy, for me, it's probably going to be Corey Kluber, $10,900 against Seattle. Obviously in Cleveland, but Seattle's just been a bad offense now. Obviously, they get Mark Trumbo now, but I mean, we've seen Corey Kluber's upside, 9 or more Ks in 4 of his last 5, including a 13, a 12, and an 18. He had 13 against the same Seattle team at Safeco on the 28th. He did give up 2 home runs, but ended up with nice little 34.4 DraftKings points. I think price considered, with Max Scherzer being more of a fly ball pitcher and being out in New York, I think that Kluber's got to be your top ace. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Kluber's just been so good that you really have to consider him. Even if Scherzer wasn't playing in New York, which I agree, I don't think is a great matchup. I mean, a lot of lefties in that lineup. He's much better against righties, although he's been great against both this year. The whole Yankees lineup, for the most part, other than A-Rod, is better against righties, though. And, I mean, for a discount, I think Kluber is the way to go against a Seattle team, like you mentioned, hasn't really been a great hitting team so far. If Cleveland's bats stay even relatively hot, I mean, this should be a fairly easy win for them. With Kluber on the mound, he's just been shutting everyone down lately.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, plenty of other options. Francisco Liriano, $9,700. It's a Milwaukee team that hits lefties better than they hit righties, but he's been pitching really, really well. Dallas Keuchel against the White Sox, and we saw him have an incredible game against them. It was a day game about a week ago. 9 innings pitched, 4 hits, 11 Ks, at $9,100. I think he'd be the last of these guys that I feel good about at the top.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be looking at him quite a bit. Outside of that, I mean, you got John Lester against the Tigers, Sonny Gray against the Rangers, who've been much, much better lately. If there's a guy I'm looking at in GPPs, it's probably going to be Gray, just because Texas has struggled at times with Beltre banged up basically all season. We know how hot Prince Fielder's been all year, but outside of that, they haven't had anyone really consistent. So they could get shut down at any time. I think Gray is a decent GPP play here because so many people are going to be on Kluber, and he's really, really close in price to him and probably a little bit overpriced.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, he's one of those guys who's been pitching well, but no one's really talking about him. So you got to like that. And then a guy who pitched well, Carlos Rodon, had 10 Ks against Texas last time out. $5,700 for him tonight against Houston. Houston, who, as we know, really, really struggles with strikeouts, especially against left-handed pitchers. So you got to like him as well.
Yeah, definitely. I have no problem with him. He's another guy I'll be looking at a decent amount, but I just don't like him quite as much. At 9,700, he's just not my favorite play. A guy I'm going to look at a decent amount that I think has a really tough road to a win against John Lester tonight. But Anibal Sanchez at 7,800 on DraftKings against a Cubs team that strikes out a ton is pretty interesting as a GPP play also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he can get the ball in the park, that's been his one big weakness this year. And I think that's a great play. And then I'll throw out, just because he's cheap, Carlos Frias. He's been really good and really bad at times, but 4.3K for him tonight, certainly in play. I mean, we've seen the really bad with him. 12 hits, 10 earned runs against San Diego, then turned right around 0 earned runs in 7 innings against St. Louis. So this is a guy that you certainly don't trust. But if you're trying to build a bunch of GBP teams with some stacks, I think he's your way to go as far as cheap pitching.
Yeah, I don't mind Chris Heston for the Giants a decent amount there too. He's a little bit pricier, but he's also had a lot more really solid starts. I think he's going to be a pretty decent favorite in this game against a Mets team that's really struggling. Despite Citi Field being a little bit better of a hitter's park this year, I still don't mind taking pitchers there at all. 5,500 for him is an interesting play also.
Yeah, absolutely. So either way, like we said, lots of guys to consider tonight. Lots of pitching options, of course, with this many games. So we'll go ahead and move on here to catcher, where Matt Wieters just came back, and he's had some great performances so far. Looks like he's 5 for 12 so far with a home run and a triple. He's your most expensive option. Actually, DraftKings still has him listed as being on the DL, which he obviously is not. So might keep his ownership down in GPPs. Gotta like that. And then, of course, St. Louis and Colorado, another Coors Field game, so you're going to want to get yourself some exposure there. We talked about it yesterday. Yadier Molina, not really a guy that has much power that you really want to pay nearly $4,000 for, but you get to guys like Nick Hundley and Michael McHenry, maybe even Willen Rosario, even though it is a righty. Those guys are certainly a play as well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't mind Lucroy against Liriano either for 3,300. He's looked a little bit better over the last couple games. He's only been back for about 5 or 6 days now. Not a ton else I love. I mean, you got Brian McCann against Scherzer. I don't want to touch that. Pierzynski against Shields is a tough matchup. No one else I'm really getting too excited about.
Yeah, I like as a tournament option Jonathan Lucroy against Francisco Liriano. I'm not trying to pick on Liriano, but when he's healthy, Lucroy one of the better catchers against lefties in the league. So certainly going to look his way in tournaments. But like you said, catcher, as usual, not particularly deep. Maybe look for some value if you're paying up elsewhere. All right, first base here. Paul Goldschmidt, nearly $6,000 still. I mean, almost unplayable at that level against Carlos Frias. He's certainly a hot hitter, guy you want some exposure to, but I don't know that it's a plausible scenario. Joey Votto gets Aaron Harang. Got to like that scenario for him. If you're not playing Anibal Sanchez, Anthony Rizzo against lefty, righty, doesn't matter. A guy who's struggling giving up home runs, you got to love him as well at 5K.
Yeah, definitely. Same kind of thing for Lester and Miguel Cabrera. I don't mind taking Cabrera at any time for 4,600 against the lefty. I don't really care too much who it is as long as it's not Kershaw.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I mean, you got to look a little bit lower. I think Votto and Cabrera are probably going to be my two high price plays in this one. Going a little bit lower, nothing I love. I don't mind Eric Hosmer against a pretty weak righty in May from Minnesota. He's okay. Jose Abreu against Keuchel is a decent play at 4,900, but I'd rather just go with the two guys I mentioned at the top.
Yeah, I'm with you there. As usual, we're paying up for first base. I'll use the guy who's first base eligible as a transition over here to second. Jeff Baker, I'm not playing him at first, but you know as well as I do, he's going to be in the lineup, probably batting cleanup against the lefty, a weak one, and Mark Burley, $2,800. It's almost a foregone conclusion that he will be my second baseman in cash games.
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to go with anyone else there. There's just not a lot of great matchups. The only other one I like very much at all is Howie Kendrick against Ray for Arizona. I always like Kendrick against the lefty. He's right in the middle of that Dodgers lineup. It's just a pretty good situation there.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a situation we want to get a part of. Jose Altuve gets a lefty and Carlos Rodon. Dustin Pedroia, another guy who's been hitting the ball really well, gets Miguel Gonzalez, who has had big-time home run struggles throughout his career. Pedroia's been fine as power stroke. You prefer him against the lefty, of course, but I think that's still a fine spot for him. And then as you're looking at cheaper guys, Neil Walker gets a rookie, and I don't even know how to say this guy's name. Taylor Youngman, maybe? I don't know much about this guy. I'm going to have to look him up, but I'm definitely going to be getting some Pirates bats. Some people like to avoid guys or new pitchers like this because no one's seen them. I like to target these guys because if they're wild, get those jitters first day, they get rocked. So I think the Pirates are going to be a fun stack tomorrow or tonight.
Yeah, I like that play too. There's a lot of interesting third basemen for tomorrow. Alex Guerrero facing a lefty in Ray. I like most of these Dodgers righties, especially the power bats. I think they're just absolutely fantastic plays in this one. I think that's going to be a decent stack. Adrian Gonzalez is a guy a lot like Joey Votto, where I don't worry about him a ton against, especially weak lefties. Not quite as good against lefties as Votto is, but a guy that can really, I mean, he can still be a middle part of your stack more than anything. Not a ton else I really love. I mean, I don't mind Todd Frazier anytime he's at home, especially like when it's a weak righty. Obviously, he's great against the lefty, but Harang's not going to scare me away from him either, but he's a little pricey. Um, Outside of Alex Guerrero, there's not a lot of cheap guys I really like. I mean, he's far and away my favorite cheap option, I think, as far as third baseman go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Third base, a place where if you're not getting a nice platoon guy for cheap, there's usually not a whole lot. So I'm with you there. Those guys. Once again, Carrera, you said he could play there. Matt Carpenter, lefty, is tough against De La Rosa, but you got to like that. And then, of course, Cubs, like we said, struggles with Sanchez and his long ball. So Chris Bryant tournaments, of course.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Moving on to shortstop, I think Johnny Peralta's far and away the top play on this slate. At 700 less than Troy Tulowitzki against the lefty. Sounds like Holiday is probably going to be out of the lineup now. He got hurt. So, I mean, Peralta might be hitting third today, and I think that's just a fantastic play.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tulo. Of course, he's $5,500. He's going to be pricey, but homered in his first at-bat, 3-run shot last night off of John Lackey. He's really coming around to what we expected. Obviously, really expensive. Especially if you're talking cash games, I think Peralta's the play, saving that kind of money, but you're going to want to get yourself some Tulo exposure because he's red hot, like we thought he would be all season, but finally now. And a couple other guys, Jung Ho Kang at $3,700 in that matchup against a rookie, and Youngman, however you want to say it, certainly looking his way. And then Zach Cozart homered last night as well, $3,400. He gets Aaron Harang. I don't mind him either.
Yeah, definitely not a bad play at all. There's a couple other cheap guys you can look at, I guess, a little bit here. I mean, they're all facing tough pitchers for the most part. They're really cheap guys. Like Brad Miller's facing Kluber. He's only $2,800 though. I mean, that obviously factors in that he's facing Kluber. Ryan Goins is facing a righty, which he's been pretty good against this year for Toronto. After Toronto scored a ton of runs last night, but it's Dan Herron. That's a tough one. One guy we talked about yesterday that if he's in the lineup again, Ivan De Jesus hit a home run yesterday, and he faces Harang, who I mentioned I don't mind targeting there. He's $2,300, so there's some really cheap options at shortstop, but I'm probably going to be paying up for Peralta for the most part.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And as you look over to the outfield, Giancarlo Stanton gets a bad left-handed pitcher in the Rogers Center. For me, he's the top option with Bautista matched up against Herron. Of course, he's certainly in play as well, but Stanton homered last night, had a huge game, $5,200 against Burley. He's going to be the guy I'm paying up for more often than not.
Yeah, most likely. All the Cardinals outfielders are going to be in play. With Holiday probably out, we're looking at, Randall Grichuk? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, I think so.
And then Borjas will probably be back in the lineup today, I would guess. And then Jason Hayward. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that lineup, whether they move I don't know what they're going to do as far as a cleanup hitter. That'll be interesting to see what they do. Maybe move Carpenter down to 3 and leave the rest of the lineup as is and insert one of the outfielders at the top. I don't know. That'll be an interesting note to look at tomorrow when that lineup gets released. But all those outfielders are pretty low price for being at Coors. They didn't really score a ton of runs last night, so they're going to be probably under-owned in a really good situation.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And especially if we can get Jason Hayward in a nice lineup spot, you don't mind him. Of course, all the other guys on the other side didn't play in the outfield also. Carlos Gonzalez, all these guys. If you're looking for cheap options, I'm looking all the way down here at the bottom. Not a whole lot. Shane Robinson's the guy who's been batting second, $2,300. You mentioned him yesterday. I think he makes for a nice value play as well. And then if he's in the lineup, you get Jeff Francoeur. He did it at Grand Slam the other day, $2,400 against Dave Sclafani, who's had his struggles at times this season. So I think you don't mind that. And then, of course, we got to mention Ryan Rayburn at $2,600 against the lefty and Roenis Elias. Yeah,
definitely. I like that play quite a bit.
All right. With that, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. And come to dailyfantasycafe.com for all of our great content today and every other day.